What would you do if your own HOA board member kept sneaking into your driveway at night, stealing electricity to charge her Tesla, and laughed in your face when you asked her to stop? Imagine paying thousands of dollars to upgrade your home, believing you're finally ahead of the curve, only to realize someone else is quietly reaping the benefits. That's exactly what happened to Darius Coleman, a 42-year-old engineer living just outside Round Rock, Texas. He had poured his savings into installing a brand-new solar panel system on his home, convinced it was one of the smartest decisions he'd ever made. Clean energy, lower bills, and a sense of independence. That was the dream. But within weeks, he noticed something strange. His electric bills weren't shrinking the way they should. At first, he chalked it up to the unpredictable Texas summer heat. Air conditioners across the neighborhood were working overtime, and maybe his household usage was higher than he thought. But then, late at night, he'd glance at the monitoring app tied to his panels and see irregular spikes in power draw. Not once or twice, but regularly, always between midnight and 3 in the morning. Darius was methodical by nature. Numbers had to make sense. And these numbers didn't. He sat in his garage one evening, laptop perched on the hood of his old Ford pickup, scrolling through the data logs. The readings suggested that someone was pulling enough power to run more than just a lamp or a fan. It looked like something big was charging. Consistently, the thought gnawed at him. He knew his wife and kids weren't secretly plugging in some hidden device. There had to be another explanation. The answer came from a simple decision. He turned to the security cameras he'd mounted around his home. Darius had set them up himself, complete with infrared night vision. They rarely caught more than a stray cat or a delivery driver, but this time was different. On a Tuesday night, just after 1 a.m., the footage showed a figure walking briskly up his driveway. The person moved with an air of entitlement, not sneaking, not cautious, just bold. She wheeled a charging cable across the side yard and, without hesitation, plugged it into the external outlet connected to his solar grid. Standing under the pale glow of the porch light was Linda Markham, his HOA board member, a woman known around the neighborhood for her sharp tongue and constant lectures about everyone else's landscaping. But here she was, in his driveway, feeding her glossy Tesla with his electricity. Darius couldn't believe it. He replayed the video 3 times, each loop confirming the same thing. Linda didn't look rushed. She didn't look worried about being caught. She simply leaned against the car, scrolling her phone as if she owned the place. After 20 minutes, she unplugged, coiled the cable neatly, and walked away as if nothing unusual had happened. The realization left Darius stunned. He thought about how much energy her car must have drawn, and how that explained the strange spikes in his data logs. The theft wasn't just small, it was deliberate, and she had probably been doing it for weeks. The next morning, while sipping coffee at his kitchen table, he felt a storm of emotions. Part of him laughed at the absurdity. Another part of him felt insulted, almost violated. His property, his investment, was being taken advantage of in plain sight. But Darius wasn't quick to anger. Years of working in engineering had taught him to keep a level head and solve problems logically. He needed to decide what to do. He considered his options. He could knock on her door right away and confront her. He could file a police report. He could blast the video on the neighborhood group chat. Each choice carried its own risks, especially since Linda wasn't just any neighbor. She sat on the HOA board, wielding influence in ways that could make life very complicated. That night, though, as he sat in his darkened living room watching the camera feed live on his phone, he couldn't shake the sense of disbelief. The footage replayed in his head over and over. The morning after confirming what he saw on camera, Darius couldn't concentrate at work. He logged into his job from home, spreadsheets glowing across his dual monitors, but his mind kept drifting back to that video. Every time he tried to crunch numbers, Linda's face popped up in his head, leaning casually against her Tesla while it sucked power straight from his solar panels. He told himself to focus. After all, he was a professional problem solver. But this was personal, and the more he thought about it, the more questions piled up. How long had she been doing this? How much money had it already cost him? And why on earth did she think it was okay? Later that evening, After dinner with his wife, Angela, and their 2 kids, he decided to check the footage from previous nights. The archive stretched back weeks. Sitting at the dining table with headphones in, he scrolled through motion-activated clips. And there she was, over and over again. Sometimes it was quick, 15 minutes of charging. Other nights, she lingered for nearly an hour. Always between midnight and 3 a.m., always with the same nonchalant attitude. Angela noticed the grim look on his face. "What's wrong?" she asked, wiping her hands on a dish towel. "You don't want to know," he muttered, eyes still locked on the screen. "Try me," he sighed, paused the video, and turned the laptop toward her. "That's Linda. She's been plugging her car into our outlet at night." Probably for weeks, Angela's eyes widened. "Are you serious? She's stealing from us? That's insane." "Yeah," Darius said. "And she doesn't even try to hide it." Angela shook her head. "You need to say something. Right away. This isn't just rude. It's theft." Darius nodded, but he wasn't sure yet. His nature wasn't confrontational. He liked to weigh things before acting, to be certain about his next step. So instead of marching to Linda's door that night, he started keeping a record. Each incident logged with timestamps, screenshots, and clips. If she thought he wasn't paying attention, she was wrong. Still, watching the pattern form made his skin crawl. It wasn't just the money, though it mattered. It was the sheer arrogance. Linda was one of those neighbors who always had something to say about everyone else's property. If someone's grass grew a little too high, she sent a notice. If a trash can was left out past pickup day, she posted about it in the HOA forum. But behind closed doors, she was the one sneaking around in the dark, draining someone else's resources. 2 nights later, Darius decided to test a theory. He waited until just after midnight, then quietly slipped outside, phone camera in hand. He stood behind his garage, hidden by the shadow of his fence. Sure enough, around 1:20 a.m., headlights rolled slowly down the street. A white Tesla pulled into his driveway like it belonged there. The driver's door opened, and Linda stepped out in a hoodie, her blonde hair tied back. She didn't even look around. She went straight for the outlet. Darius clenched his jaw and hit record. She plugged in the car, scrolled through her phone, and leaned against the fender. He filmed for a solid 30 seconds, then stepped back into the shadows, his pulse pounding in his ears. When she finally unplugged and drove off, he slipped back inside, heart racing. That video made everything real. It wasn't just data on a chart. It was proof. Clear, undeniable proof, and it lit a fire in him. The next day, he called one of his neighbors, Carlos Rivera, a friend who lived 3 houses down. "Hey man, you got a minute?" "Sure," Carlos said. "What's up?" "I need you to see something." Darius forwarded the clip. Silence filled the line until Carlos finally spoke. "Wow, that's Linda, no question. She's bold, huh? Tell me about it. You gonna confront her?" "I don't know yet." By the 3rd week of watching Linda sneak onto his property, Darius had reached his limit. He wasn't impulsive by nature, but patience has a breaking point. And every time he opened his solar app and saw those strange power spikes, his frustration deepened. He knew it was time to confront her directly. The opportunity came faster than expected. One Saturday morning, while Darius was raking leaves in the front yard, Linda strolled down the street with her dog, a tiny Yorkie that barked at everything. She waved like nothing was wrong, that same polished smile she flashed at HOA meetings plastered across her face. "Morning, Darius," she called out. He set the rake aside and straightened. "Morning, Linda. Got a minute?" Her smile faltered slightly. "Sure. What's up?" He pulled his phone from his pocket and opened the video he'd filmed days earlier. He held it out. "That's you, right? Charging your car at my outlet." For a split second, the mask dropped. Her eyes narrowed, her mouth tightened, but then she forced a laugh. "Oh, come on. Don't be dramatic. I only borrowed a little power. You've got solar panels, Darius. You produce more energy than you need. It's not hurting anyone." "It's not yours to take," he said evenly. "You didn't ask. You just helped yourself." Linda shifted uncomfortably, tugging on the dog's leash. "You're overreacting." This whole neighborhood benefits from people like you who invest in green energy. I figured you'd be happy to share. Share? That's not sharing, Linda. That's stealing. His voice sharpened, and she flinched. I've got weeks of footage. This isn't once or twice. This is a pattern. Her defensiveness hardened. Look, I'm on the HOA board. If we really want to go down this road, I can make your life very difficult. Do you really want to pick a fight over something so small? That line hit him like a slap. She wasn't apologizing, wasn't embarrassed. She was threatening him. Darius bit back his first instinct, which was to explode. Instead, he breathed slowly, choosing his words carefully. I'm not looking for a fight. I'm asking you to respect my property. Don't plug into my house again. Linda huffed, tugging her dog closer. Fine. If it bothers you that much, I won't. She turned sharply, marching back down the street without another word. But Darius knew her tone. That wasn't an admission. That was arrogance. She didn't see herself as guilty. She saw herself as untouchable. That night, he told Angela what had happened. She shook her head, furious. She basically threatened you. What kind of person does that? The kind who thinks she runs the neighborhood, he muttered. Angela folded her arms. You should tell the HOA president. Or the police, I'll handle it, Darius said. But I need to be smart. The following week proved his instincts right. At first, Linda stayed away, maybe spooked by the confrontation. But just 5 nights later, Darius checked his cameras and saw the white Tesla pulling into his driveway again. She plugged in like nothing had ever been said. When he showed Angela the clip, she threw up her hands. She doesn't care. She thinks she's untouchable. You can't reason with someone like that. The betrayal burned deeper now. Darius had given her a chance to stop. She ignored him. Worse, she mocked him by returning so quickly. He began to realize this wasn't just about electricity anymore. It was about respect, or the lack of it. A few days later, he attended the monthly HOA meeting at the community center. The air smelled of coffee and paper handouts, folding chairs lined in rows. Neighbors chatted about lawn rules and trash pickup. Linda sat at the front, clipboard in hand, leading the meeting with her usual smug authority. For the next few days, Darius kept a close eye on his cameras. He half expected Linda to show up again the very next night, but the driveway stayed empty. Maybe, just maybe, the HOA meeting had embarrassed her enough to back off, but Darius knew better than to assume. People like Linda didn't let go easily. By the 4th night, the Tesla returned. Same time frame, same routine. Darius sat in his living room, watching the live feed on his phone, jaw tight. Angela sat beside him, shaking her head. She doesn't even care, she whispered. You confronted her. You embarrassed her in front of the neighbors, and she's still doing it. What's it going to take? Darius didn't answer right away. He just watched Linda leaning casually against her car while his solar system pumped electricity into her Tesla. After she drove away, he finally spoke. I'll try one more time, but after that, she's leaving me no choice. The next morning, he walked across the street. Linda was out front, trimming hedges, wearing oversized sunglasses and pretending not to notice him approach. He stopped at the edge of her lawn. We need to talk, he said flatly. She didn't look up. About what? You know exactly what. Finally, she dropped the hedge clippers and faced him, arms crossed. Oh, for heaven's sake, are we still on this? I thought you said your piece at the meeting. And I thought you understood me, Darius shot back. But apparently not, since you were at my house again last night. Her lips curled into a smirk. I told you, you've got solar. You're producing more than you use. The excess goes back to the grid anyway. What difference does it make if I take a little? Darius stepped closer, lowering his voice. The difference is permission. It's my house, my outlet, my investment. You didn't ask, and I didn't agree. That's theft, Linda. Plain and simple. Her tone sharpened. You think calling it theft makes it true? Grow up. You're acting like I broke into your safe. You broke into my trust. He snapped. And if you keep doing it, I'll make sure the whole neighborhood knows exactly what kind of person you are. For a moment, they just glared at each other. Then she scoffed and picked up the hedge clippers again. Do whatever you want, Darius. I'm not scared of you. He turned and walked back home, fists clenched. Angela met him at the door. How'd it go? He exhaled sharply. Exactly how I expected. She doesn't respect me, or anyone else. She thinks rules don't apply to her. Angela touched his arm. So what now? Darius hesitated. He didn't want to escalate, but at this point, diplomacy felt useless. Still, part of him hoped that the direct confrontation might sink in. Maybe she'd finally realize she was pushing too far. But a week later, the pattern continued. Every few nights, there she was again. Sometimes she was bold enough to pull in earlier, before midnight. Once Darius watched in disbelief as she parked in his driveway while his kids' bikes were still lying on the grass. She didn't even care who saw. One afternoon, he decided to test just how brazen she really was. He left the front porch light on, deliberately making it clear that someone was awake. Around 1 a.m., he sat in the living room with the blinds cracked open. Sure enough, headlights rolled up. Linda parked, got out, and walked straight to the outlet without even glancing at the house. Darius stood and opened the front door. "Linda!" he called out. She jerked back, startled, but quickly recovered. "Oh, relax. I thought you were asleep." "That doesn't make it better," he said, stepping onto the porch. "You're trespassing. You're stealing. Stop pretending it's harmless." She crossed her arms. The garage smelled faintly of oil and metal, the kind of scent that clung to old tools and concrete floors. Darius sat at his workbench, a small lamp casting a circle of light over wires, screwdrivers, and an open laptop. His foot tapped against the floor in a restless rhythm. Angela had gone to bed hours earlier, but he couldn't sleep. Not while Linda kept treating his home like a public charging station. He stared at the security footage, playing on loop. Linda plugging in. Linda scrolling her phone. Linda walking away without a second thought. Every frame told the same story. Disrespect. It wasn't the electricity anymore. It wasn't even the bills. It was the principle. He had asked nicely. He had warned her. And she had laughed in his face. That night, he made a decision. If Linda wanted to keep stealing from him, she was going to learn the hard way that there were consequences. The next morning, he researched everything he could about Tesla charging systems. He knew enough about voltage to navigate safely, but he wanted to be precise. He wasn't out to damage property or hurt anyone. He just wanted to disrupt her routine in a way that couldn't be ignored. After hours of reading, he sketched out a plan. By tweaking the outlet settings, he could create a surge strong enough to overload the car's system without posing any danger. Annoying, inconvenient, embarrassing, but not destructive. Still, as he soldered and wired, a voice nagged at him. What if this goes too far? That evening, Carlos dropped by. He leaned against the doorway of the garage, watching Darius work. "You're looking intense, man." "What's going on?" Darius glanced up. "She won't stop. I tried everything. Warnings, conversations, even calling her out in front of the HOA. She doesn't care." Carlos crossed his arms. "So what's this? Plan B? More like her wake-up call." Darius explained the adjustments. Carlos whistled low. "You sure about this?" "She leaves me no choice. She's daring me to act." Carlos shook his head. "I get it, but careful. People like Linda, they play dirty. You embarrass her, she'll come at you twice as hard." Darius tightened a screw, his jaw set. "Then let her. I'm done being walked on." The next few days, he kept fine-tuning the system. He didn't advertise what he was doing, didn't even tell Angela the full plan. She knew he was working on something, but he kept the details vague. The less she knew, the less she had to worry. Meanwhile, Linda grew bolder. One afternoon, while Angela was pulling into the driveway with groceries, Linda actually stopped by to chat, her Tesla gleaming at the curb. She smiled sweetly and said, "Angela, I hope Darius isn't still upset about that silly outlet situation." "Honestly, he's making it into more than it is." Angela tightened her grip on the grocery bag. "Linda, you're lucky he's patient. Anyone else would have called the cops already." Linda's smile stiffened. "Cops? Please, nobody's going to waste time over a little borrowed energy." She gave a dismissive wave and walked away. When Angela told Darius later, his anger hardened into resolve. If she thought the law wouldn't take him seriously, then he'd make sure reality did. That night, as he finished the final tweaks, he sat back and stared at the modified outlet. It looked ordinary, but it was waiting for her arrogance to cross the line one more time. He closed the garage door, turned off the light, and whispered to himself, "Let's see how entitled you feel when the system fights back." Still, a sliver of doubt nagged at him. He wasn't a vindictive man by nature. He was a problem solver. But this wasn't just a problem anymore. It was personal. And deep down, he knew once Linda experienced the trap, there would be no turning back. But before he had time to second-guess himself, Linda would return. And this time, she was about to face the consequences of pushing too far. The night was heavy with silence when Darius sat in his living room, phone in hand, watching the live feed from his cameras. The trap was set. His modified outlet looked ordinary, the same one Linda had been abusing for weeks, but behind its cover plate was a small piece of engineering that would change everything. He had spent days fine-tuning the adjustments, running tests, double-checking safety measures. The voltage surge would overload the Tesla's charging cycle, not enough to cause lasting damage, but enough to throw the system into chaos. Angela joined him on the couch, wrapping herself in a blanket. "You're really going through with this?" "Yes," he said firmly. "I've tried talking, reasoning, even warning her in front of the whole HOA. She doesn't stop. She doesn't respect boundaries. She needs to feel consequences." Angela studied him for a moment. "You're not doing this out of spite, are you?" He shook his head. "I'm doing it because she thinks she can walk all over me. If I don't act now, she'll keep doing it. Maybe not just with me, but with anyone else who won't fight back." Angela didn't reply, but the way she pressed her lips together told him she wasn't fully convinced. Still, she didn't stop him. She knew this wasn't just about electricity anymore. It was about dignity. The first 2 nights, nothing happened. No Tesla in the driveway, no shadow slipping across the yard. Darius wondered if maybe she had finally backed off. But on the 3rd night, just after 1 a.m., headlights rolled slowly up the street. His heart kicked against his ribs. The car pulled into the driveway, smooth and quiet, and Linda stepped out, her hoodie pulled tight against the cool air. She moved with the same careless confidence as always. In one hand, she held her charging cable, in the other, her phone. Without hesitation, she plugged the car into Darius's outlet. Darius leaned forward on the couch, phone in hand, watching the feed like a hawk. "Here we go," he whispered. At first, everything seemed normal. The Tesla beeped softly, the green charging light glowing near the port. Linda leaned against the fender, scrolling through her phone. But then, less than a minute later, the car jolted. The light flickered, then turned red. A string of error codes flashed across the dashboard. Linda jumped back, startled, staring at the car like it had betrayed her. "What the?" Her voice carried faintly, caught by the mic on the camera. She unplugged the cable, plugged it back in. Same result. Error codes. Warning chimes. No charge. Darius couldn't help it. A smile tugged at the corners of his mouth. Weeks of frustration and disrespect collapsed into that one moment of poetic justice. Linda's face twisted in confusion and anger as she fiddled with the plug, slapping the side of the car in frustration. Angela, sitting beside him, covered her mouth. "Oh my God, it's working!" On the screen, Linda paced in circles, muttering to herself, before yanking the cable out entirely. She stared at the outlet like it had betrayed her, then stormed back to her car. The Tesla wouldn't start. She climbed inside, pressed buttons, tried again. Nothing but error messages lighting up the dashboard. The camera caught her slamming her hand against the steering wheel. Finally, after several agonizing minutes, she called someone. Her voice, sharp and irritated, carried through the mic. "Yeah, the car won't start. It's dead. I don't know. Something's wrong with the charger. Just get over here." Darius sat back, heart still racing. "She's stuck." Angela gave him a side glance. "You're enjoying this a little too much," he chuckled softly. "She earned it." Minutes later, another car arrived. A neighbor, Maybe a friend picked her up. The Tesla remained in his driveway, inert, lights blinking like a wounded animal. Darius saved the footage immediately, backing it up twice. Proof that she had once again crossed the line, and proof that this time... By morning, the white Tesla still sat in Darius's driveway, silent and useless. Its hazard lights had drained overnight, leaving it looking lifeless, almost abandoned. Neighbors walking their dogs slowed down, staring curiously at the car parked where it didn't belong. By the time Darius stepped outside to grab the newspaper, whispers had already started. Carlos crossed the street, coffee mug in hand. "Man, what's Linda's car doing here?" Darius shrugged casually, though his pulse quickened. "Guess she had a rough night?" Carlos chuckled, lowering his voice. "Word is she had to call someone to pick her up at 2 a.m. Folks are talking. Darius hid a smile. He knew exactly what had happened, but part of him enjoyed letting the mystery stir. Around mid-morning, Linda marched up the street, her face tight with frustration. She had ditched the usual HOA polish, her hair was unbrushed, and her voice carried sharp edges. "Darius, what did you do to my car?" He leaned against his porch railing, calm and collected. "What do you mean?" "You know exactly what I mean. I plugged in last night, and now my Tesla's dead. Totally bricked. Do you have any idea how much this could cost me?" "Linda," he said evenly, "I warned you. I told you to stop using my outlet. You didn't listen. Whatever happened to your car, that's on you." She threw her hands up. "Don't play games with me. You tampered with it. I could sue you for this." "Go ahead," Darius replied, voice steady. "Just remember, I've got weeks of footage showing you trespassing and stealing electricity every night. You really want to bring a lawyer into this?" For the first time, Linda hesitated. Her eyes darted toward the neighbors who had stopped to watch. An elderly couple down the street stood in their yard, whispering. A teenager on his bike had slowed to a crawl, eavesdropping. The humiliation was written all over her face. "You're going to regret this," she snapped finally, her voice trembling more from embarrassment than anger. She stormed off, yanking her phone out to make a call. By the afternoon, a tow truck rumbled down the street, hooking the Tesla onto its bed. Neighbors came out of their homes like it was a parade. Phones lifted, cameras clicked. Linda stood nearby, arms crossed, cheeks flushed red as the car was hauled away. Angela watched from the window with Darius at her side. "She's furious," Angela whispered. "But I've never seen her look so... small." Darius didn't answer. He just saved the new footage and filed it away. Every second was ammunition, should Linda decide to escalate. The gossip spread like wildfire. In the neighborhood Facebook group, vague posts started popping up. "Funny how some people think rules don't apply to them," one neighbor wrote. Another chimed in, "Stealing electricity? Who does that?" Though no names were mentioned, everyone knew. That evening, Carlos stopped by again, shaking his head. "She's the talk of the block. People can't believe she had the nerve to keep using your outlet after you warned her. Some are even saying she's been bullying folks for years, just in quieter ways." Darius leaned back in his chair, thoughtful. "Maybe this is the first time she got caught in a way she couldn't spin." Carlos smirked. "Well, you caught her good." But the victory felt complicated. As much as he relished seeing her arrogance crumble, he couldn't ignore the nagging sense that things weren't finished. Linda wasn't someone who accepted defeat gracefully. Sure enough, later that night, she posted in the HOA forum. Her message was long and carefully. By the end of the week, Linda's Tesla incident wasn't just a neighborhood curiosity. It was the main topic of conversation. At the community pool, parents whispered about it between swim lessons. At the local HEB grocery store, people nudged each other in the produce aisle, trading theories. It didn't take long for someone to leak screenshots from the security footage. A grainy clip of Linda plugging in her car began circulating in private group chats. From there, it found its way onto Facebook. The post exploded. Neighbors argued in the comments, some defending Darius, others claiming Linda was being unfairly targeted. One man wrote, "Property is property. If you take without asking, it's theft." End of story. Another replied, "It's just electricity." You all are acting like she robbed a bank. Soon the debate spread beyond Round Rock. A local community blog picked up the story, posting the video under the headline, HO, a board member caught stealing power from neighbors' solar panels. That headline turned a neighborhood feud into a spectacle. Darius sat at the kitchen table scrolling through his phone, stunned at how fast it was spreading. Angela leaned over his shoulder, reading aloud some of the comments. Look at this one. If she thinks she's entitled to free power, what else is she taking? And here's another. Classic HOA nonsense. Rules for thee but not for me. Darius shook his head. I never wanted this to go public. I just wanted her to stop. Angela placed her hand on his arm. You didn't make it public, Dee. Her behavior did. People are tired of bullies hiding behind titles. Meanwhile, Linda was scrambling to repair her image. She posted long defenses in the HOA forum, calling herself a victim of targeted harassment. She insisted she had only used the outlet once or twice in emergencies. But the footage told a different story, and neighbors weren't buying it. Carlos dropped by again one evening, his grin wide. Man, she's cooked. Everyone's talking. Half the neighborhood wants her off the board. They're calling for a vote. Darius leaned back in his chair. I didn't want it to get this far, but maybe it's the only way to stop her. Carlos nodded. She's been running this HOA like her personal fiefdom for years. People were just waiting for a reason. You gave it to them. But Linda wasn't going down without a fight. 2 days later, an official HOA notice appeared in everyone's mailbox, signed by Linda herself. It accused an unnamed resident of tampering with electrical equipment and creating a dangerous environment. The notice warned that legal action might be necessary if the behavior continued. Angela slammed the paper down on the counter when she read it. She's trying to flip the script. Make it look like you're the problem. Let her, Darius said calmly. The evidence is on my side. If she really wants to escalate, I'll let the police see the footage. Still, the tension grew. Neighbors stopped waving at Linda during her morning walks. Some crossed the street to avoid her. At the next HOA meeting, she tried to run business as usual, but residents interrupted her with pointed questions. Did you really plug into his outlet without permission? One man demanded. That's not the issue, Linda snapped. The issue is sabotage. No, another neighbor cut in. The issue is respect, and you've shown none. The room erupted in murmurs. Linda tried to regain control, pounding her gavel, but it was clear she was losing her grip. Later that evening, as Darius sat on his porch sipping iced tea, Carlos walked up, shaking his head. She's done, man. People are already organizing to remove her. This was the last straw. Darius exhaled slowly, staring across the quiet street. Good. Maybe this community can breathe again. But he also knew Linda's pride wouldn't let her fade quietly. And if the whispers online were any indication, the story wasn't just about a neighborhood feud anymore. It had become... The HOA meeting that followed was unlike any Darius had ever attended. Normally they were dull affairs filled with talk of lawn heights, mailbox paint colors, and whether or not holiday decorations could be left up past January. But this time, the room buzzed with tension before the meeting even started. Rows of folding chairs were packed, neighbors whispering and side-eyeing Linda as she sat stiffly at the front, gavel in hand. When the meeting opened, she tried to maintain her usual composure. First item on the agenda, she began, voice clipped, is community safety and... Safety, a neighbor interrupted from the back. You mean stealing electricity is safe now? The room erupted with chuckles and murmurs. Linda banged the gavel hard. Order! Order! Darius sat quietly in the middle row, arms folded. He didn't plan to speak unless he had to, but the crowd wasn't letting Linda off easy. Another neighbor raised her hand. Linda, people have seen the video. Are you denying it's you in those clips? Linda straightened her shoulders. Those recordings are misleading and taken out of context. I used his outlet once in an emergency, and now I'm being vilified. Carlos, sitting a few rows away, muttered loud enough for the room to hear. Funny how an emergency happens the same time every week. The laughter that followed hit Linda like a slap. Her cheeks flushed red. "This is harassment," she snapped. "I've dedicated years to this community, and this is how I'm repaid? By lies and character attacks?" At that, Darius stood. His voice was calm, steady, but it carried across the room. "Nobody here lied, Linda. I have weeks of footage, every night, between midnight and 3. You weren't helping yourself once. You were stealing repeatedly. And when I confronted you, you threatened me instead of apologizing." The silence that followed was deafening. Even Linda's allies on the board shifted uncomfortably in their seats. One man near the front cleared his throat. "Frankly, Linda, this isn't about harassment. It's about accountability. You abused your position, and now the whole neighborhood is paying the price." The meeting spiraled from there. Neighbors called for a vote to remove her from the board. Linda tried to deflect, claiming Darius had tampered with electrical systems and endangered the community, but no one bought it. They'd seen the video, heard the stories, watched her Tesla towed away. Her credibility was collapsing in real time. Darius didn't push further. He didn't need to. The evidence spoke louder than anything he could say. That night, he returned home exhausted, but relieved. Angela met him at the door. "How did it go?" He sank into a chair. "Bad for her." "Good for us. They're going to hold a special vote next month to remove her from the board." Angela smiled faintly. Finally, maybe this will be over. But even as she said it, Darius wasn't sure. People like Linda didn't go quietly. He suspected she'd keep fighting, even if it meant dragging him into legal battles. Sure enough, 2 days later, an envelope arrived in his mailbox. Inside was a letter from Linda's attorney, accusing him of willful sabotage and demanding he pay damages for the Tesla repairs. The letter threatened to escalate to civil court if he didn't comply. Angela read it aloud, her face tightening. "She's really trying this?" Darius nodded slowly. "Of course she is." Darius took a slow breath. "Maybe. Or maybe it's just the calm before the storm. Either way, I'm ready." But deep down, he knew this story wasn't just... When the HOA gathered for the special vote a month later, the turnout was the largest anyone in the neighborhood had seen. Folding chairs lined the community center walls, extra people stood in the back, and the air buzzed with tension. Everyone knew why they were there. Linda sat stiffly at the front table, her lawyer perched beside her, flipping through a stack of papers. She looked more defiant than remorseful, her chin held high as though she still believed she could sway the crowd. The meeting opened with routine business, but it was clear no one cared about lawn maintenance or pool hours. All eyes were on Linda. When the vote finally came up, the HOA president, a soft-spoken retiree named Janet, stood at the podium and read the motion. To remove board member Linda Markham from her position due to misconduct unbecoming of the office hands shot up across the room. Some high, some hesitant, but most were firm. The count was overwhelming. Linda had been ousted. For the first time in years, she wasn't the one in control. Darius didn't gloat. He sat quietly, watching her face tighten as reality sank in. This wasn't just about a Tesla or stolen electricity anymore. It was about accountability. For once, the neighborhood had drawn a line in the sand. Outside, after the meeting, neighbors clapped him on the back. "You did the right thing," one said. Another added, "It's about time someone stood up to her." Even people Darius barely knew nodded in acknowledgement. It felt strange, almost surreal. He hadn't set out to be a symbol of resistance, but that's what he'd become. Back home that evening, Angela curled up next to him on the porch swing. "It's over," she whispered. He exhaled slowly, eyes drifting over the quiet street. "Yeah. But you know what bothers me most? It didn't have to get this far. All she had to do was respect a boundary. One simple rule. Don't take what isn't yours." Angela squeezed his hand. "Some people don't understand until they're forced to." The following week, life began to settle. The kids rode bikes up and down the street again. Neighbors who had avoided Linda for years now waved more freely, as if a weight had been lifted. Even Carlos remarked, "Feels like the neighborhood finally belongs to everyone again, not just her." Darius thought about that. It amazed him how one person's arrogance could poison an entire community, and how standing firm, even against something that seemed small, could change everything. One evening, while cleaning up his garage, he scrolled back through the old footage. There was Linda again and again, plugging in without permission. He almost felt sorry for her. Almost. Because what he saw wasn't just a neighbor sneaking electricity. It was entitlement in its rawest form, a belief that rules didn't apply. The story wasn't just about solar panels or a Tesla. It was about respect, about how fragile communities become when people ignore the simple principle of treating others fairly. Darius closed the laptop, switched off the light, and stepped outside into the cool night. The street was quiet now, peaceful. For the first time in months, he felt like his home was truly his again. And maybe, just maybe, the neighborhood had learned something too. Because at the end of the day, it wasn't about voltage or outlets or car batteries. It was about drawing a line and saying, this far, no further. That lesson is one we all face, in big ways and small. Whether it's someone taking advantage of your kindness, testing your patience, or disrespecting your boundaries, there comes a moment when you have to decide, will I let this continue, or will I stand up for myself? Darius chose the latter, and in doing so, he reminded everyone around him that respect isn't optional. It's earned. So if you're listening to this story, think about your own life. Where are you allowing someone to cross the line? And when will you finally say enough? Don't wait until the damage piles up. Don't let entitlement steal your peace. Learn from Darius's story, because sometimes the quietest stand makes the loudest impact. And if you found yourself hooked on this story, make sure you subscribe for more. You never know when the next tale of ordinary people facing extraordinary moments will land right here.